Hello and welcome to this edition of View on Africa. My name is Eon Tadessa Bebe. I'm a senior researcher in the migration program of the Institute for Security Studies. Today, I will talk about Africa's conflicts and forced displacement cycle. I would like to start by sharing with you a story. In May 2018, I sat down with Foni for an interview, a South Sudanese refugee who comes from Kenya to attend and participate in South Sudan's high-level revitalization forum in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Foni fled to Kenya from South Sudan in 1991 due to the conflict at the time. If the Organization of African Unities Refugee Convention was a person, he or she would have been in the worst state of sadness to see someone like Foni, a very eloquent and bright young woman among the 20.8 million forcibly displaced in the continent. Not only that, the convention could have faced a heart attack to learn that Uganda alone hosts 1.2 million refugees today, recalling that there were 700,000 refugees by the time it was born in 1969. Noting that internal displacement was not even an issue 50 years ago, he or she would have asked what went wrong in the continent. Like today, conflict was the primary driver of displacement 50 years ago. But the nature of conflict has changed over time. 50 years ago, Africans were fighting with their colonizers, which resulted in the displacement of thousands of people. Today, Africans are primarily engaged in intrastate conflict, which has resulted in the displacement of millions of people. For example, in 2017, half of the world's 20 violent conflicts were in Africa. The countries that experience such conflicts include Central African Republic, CAR, the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, across Lake Chad Basin due to Boko Haram, Ethiopia due to inter-ethnic conflict, Somalia and Kenya due to Al-Shabaab, South Sudan and Sudan. Consequently, 5 of the 7 situations which the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, has categorized as refugee emergencies are found in countries or regions that are currently experiencing violent conflicts, such as in DRC, CAR, Nigeria, South Sudan, and Burundi. Drivers of these conflicts include poverty, economic hardships, poor governance, marginalization of the youth, and election-related violence. I would also like to mention that natural disasters and climate-induced displacement are also forcing many to flee. The link between conflict and displacement is well established, but the challenge is to understand why Africa has failed to address these conflicts. Part of the problem lies in Africa's insufficient focus on conflict prevention and resolution efforts. This is due to lack of resources and political will, among others. Most of the efforts have focused on conflict management, a strategy that opts for suppression or elimination of overt conflicts to reduce suffering after the conflict has already erupted. The result is the deployment of peacekeeping operations on the continent. In this regard, 7 out of the 14 UN peacekeeping missions are in Africa. Despite huge investments in these missions, their effectiveness is hard to measure. So what needs to be done to address the root causes of conflict and displacement? First, it's important to note that the nature and trends of conflict are changing. According to the 2019 State of Governance in Africa report produced by the African Union, Since 2001, intrastate conflicts have been more prevalent in the continent than conflicts between states. This requires strengthened conflict resolution and prevention efforts, focusing on national dialogues and other instruments of political settlement. This is in line with African Union's fourth aspiration of Agenda 2063, which highlights the need for dialogue-centered conflict prevention and management and resolution of existing conflicts. This also goes well with other important initiatives in the continent, such as Silencing the Gun by 2020. The roadmap of Silencing the Gun recognizes the importance of addressing the plight of internally displaced persons and refugees and eliminating the root causes of this phenomena by fully implementing continental and universal frameworks. Silencing the Gun is a huge step towards making sure that the burden of conflict is not transferred to the next generation of Africans. However, despite its noble vision, implementation is quite difficult on the ground. This is because, first of all, there is a lack of democracy and human rights in many African countries. There is also lack of economic opportunities to enable the youth to earn their living, together with the abundance of arms. The ongoing African Union reform process may help address some of these challenges, assuming that the continental body becomes more effective in line with its reform aspirations. These include institutional restructuring, self-financing, and decreasing the number of summits. The self-financing scheme has already enabled the Peace Fund to raise $84 million in Africa, and 75% of this funding will be used for mediating and preventive diplomacy initiatives. Resolving some of Africa's conflicts is not just about resources. A case in point is the unexpected resolution of the border conflict between Ethiopia and Eritrea in 2018. Political transformation in Ethiopia and the related change of discourse and attitude perception between the two governments dramatically transformed the conflict, despite the fact that the full normalization of relations and implementation of the border decision are still pending. I would like to conclude by highlighting the fact that the 2019 African Union's Theme of the Year, which focuses on refugees, returnees, and IDPs towards durable solution to forced displacement in Africa, could help create greater awareness on the need to address conflicts, thereby leading to the political will to achieve a lasting solution to refugees like Foni and the next generation to come. Thank you so much for watching this edition of View on Africa.